I was walking down the street one day, minding my own business and enjoying the sunshine. As I approached the local ice cream truck, I saw a group of kids gathered around it, eagerly waiting for their turn to order. I smiled and joined the line, excited to treat myself to a delicious frozen treat. But as I approached the front of the line, I noticed a woman standing there with her arms crossed, looking extremely annoyed. The woman was middle-aged, with a short haircut and a stern expression on her face. She was wearing a designer outfit and carrying a fancy handbag, as if she was too good to be standing in line for ice cream like the rest of us. I rolled my eyes and tried to ignore her, but I could sense that trouble was brewing. Suddenly, the woman stepped forward and cut in front of me in line, completely ignoring the other customers who had been waiting patiently. I couldn't believe her audacity. "Excuse me," I said, tapping her on the shoulder. "The end of the line is back there." The woman turned to me, scowling. "Do you know who I am? I'm Linda, and I don't have time for this nonsense." I couldn't help but laugh at her entitled attitude. "Oh, sorry, Linda," I replied sarcastically. I didn't realize that being a rude and entitled person was a prerequisite for skipping the line. Linda's face turned red with anger, and she started to argue with me. But I wasn't about to back down. I stood my ground and refused to let her bully her way to the front of the line. The other customers started to speak up too, telling Linda that she needed to wait her turn like everyone else, but she just ignored them and continued to argue with me. Finally, the ice cream truck driver stepped in and put an end to the argument. "Sorry, ma'am, but you'll have to wait in line like everyone else," he said firmly. Linda's face twisted into an ugly scowl as she realized she wasn't going to get her way. She started to mutter under her breath and shake with anger. The kids in line were getting nervous, and some of them stepped back, sensing the tension. I said to Linda, "Please, Linda, get back to the end of the line. You're making everybody late." Suddenly, Linda reached out and snatched an ice cream cone from a little girl who was waiting patiently in line. The girl looked up at her with tears in her eyes, shocked that someone could be so mean. Linda grinned wickedly as she raised the ice cream cone over her head, ready to throw it on me. But before she could do anything, a brave teenager stepped forward and grabbed the cone out of her hand. "Hey, leave her alone!" the teenager shouted, standing up to Linda. Linda glared at the teenager, furious that someone was challenging her authority. But the teenager didn't back down. They held the ice cream cone protectively, shielding the little girl from Linda's rage. "Get out of here! You're not welcome in this line," I said firmly. Linda hesitated for a moment, glaring at the teenager with pure hatred. But then she turned and stormed off, muttering under her breath about how unfair the world was. The rest of us in line breathed a sigh of relief as Linda disappeared down the street. We thanked the teenager for standing up to her and made sure the little girl got a fresh ice cream cone. And then we all went back to enjoying our day, grateful that we had stood up to someone who was trying to bully us. Last Saturday morning, I decided to take my beloved golden retriever, Daisy, for a walk in the park. I had just moved to this new town and didn't know anyone yet, so I was looking forward to some fresh air and exercise. As we walked down the path, I noticed a woman walking towards us. She had a sour look on her face and was talking on her phone loudly. "Karen, I don't care what they said. I need to speak to the manager now. I demand to be treated with respect," she bellowed into her phone. I rolled my eyes and continued walking, hoping to avoid any confrontation. But as she approached us, her eyes locked onto Daisy, and she scowled. "Excuse me, but your dog needs to be on a leash. This is a public park, and we can't have dogs running around freely," she said, pointing her finger at me. I was taken aback. Daisy was on a leash, and we were following all the park rules. I looked around, trying to see if there were any signs indicating otherwise, but I couldn't find any. She is on a leash," I replied, trying to keep my tone calm. "That's not the point. She's a dog, and dogs need to be on leashes. You should know better," she snapped back. I could feel my blood pressure rising, but I didn't want to cause a scene. I simply nodded and continued walking. "Excuse me, are you deaf?" I said. "Your dog needs to be on a leash." "Do I need to call the authorities?" she shouted. I turned around, fuming. "My dog is on a leash. And I don't appreciate you making a scene. Why don't you mind your own business and leave us alone? I retorted. Karen huffed and stormed off, still muttering about how entitled people were these days. I took a deep breath and continued my walk, trying to calm down. As we continued walking, I couldn't help but wonder what Karen's problem was. Who goes around yelling at strangers about their dogs? I decided to put her out of my mind and enjoy the rest of my walk, but Karen wasn't done yet. "Hey you, but I need to speak to you about something," she said. I sighed, already anticipating what was coming next. "What is it?" I asked. "I don't appreciate your attitude earlier. You were very rude to me, and I demand an apology," she said, crossing her arms. I was taken aback. I hadn't been rude to her. She was the one causing a scene for no reason. "I don't owe you an apology. I was following the rules, and you were harassing me for no reason," I replied. Karen rolled her eyes. "Typical entitled millennial. You think the world owes you something? I bet you don't even have a job, do you?" she sneered. That was the last straw. I had just moved to this town, and I was struggling to find work. Her comment hit a nerve, and I snapped, "You know what? You have no right to judge me. You don't know anything about me or my life. Maybe if you spent less time worrying about other people's dogs, you'd have time to mind your own business. I'm just trying to live my life and enjoy my day. You're the one causing a scene and harassing people for no reason. Maybe you should take a look in the mirror and realize that the world doesn't revolve around you," I said, feeling empowered. Karen looked flustered and muttered something about entitled kids these days before storming off. It all started on a sunny Sunday afternoon. I was out for a walk in the park trying to clear my head from the stresses of my job as a software engineer. As I was walking, I noticed a group of kids playing catch with a frisbee. They seemed to be having a great time until an entitled woman who I later found out was named Karen approached them. Karen was in her late 40s, with a face full of wrinkles and a scowl that could frighten anyone. She was yelling at the kids, demanding that they stop playing because they were interrupting her picnic with her family. The kids tried to explain that they were just playing catch and not bothering anyone, but Karen wouldn't hear any of it. I decided to intervene, hoping to defuse the situation. "Excuse me, ma'am, but these kids aren't doing anything wrong. They're just playing catch." Karen turned to me with a look of disgust. "Who asked you? Mind your own business." "Well, I am minding my own business, but I can't help but notice that you're causing a scene," I replied, trying to keep my cool. "I paid good money for this spot, and I won't have these brats ruining it for me," Karen said, crossing her arms. I could feel my blood boiling. "Listen, lady, these kids have just as much right to be here as you do. They're not harming anyone, and you're just being selfish." Karen was taken aback by my response, but before she could say anything else, one of the kids spoke up. "Yeah, leave us alone, lady. We're just trying to have fun." Karen scowled at the kid, but finally gave up and stormed off with her family. I could hear her grumbling as she walked away, but I didn't care. I was just glad that the kids could continue playing without any further interruption. As I walked away, I was wondering what kind of person she was outside of this incident. Little did I know, I would soon find out. A few days later, I was at the grocery store when I heard a commotion coming from the checkout lanes. It was Karen again, this time arguing with the cashier over a coupon that had expired. "I want to speak to your manager," Karen yelled, slamming her hand on the counter. I rolled my eyes and tried to ignore her, but I couldn't help but overhear the conversation. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this coupon has expired and I can't accept it," the cashier said. "This is ridiculous. I demand to speak to someone who knows what they're doing," Karen replied, her voice growing louder. I decided to intervene again, hoping to prevent Karen from causing a bigger scene. "Excuse me, ma'am, but the coupon has clearly expired. Maybe you should just pay the full price." Karen turned to me with a look of pure hatred. "Who do you think you are? Mind your own business?" I was getting fed up with her entitled attitude. "I am minding my own business, but you're causing a scene and making everyone else's experience worse. Maybe you should learn to be more considerate of others." Karen scoffed. "I don't have to take this from some nobody like you. I demand to speak to your manager, too. I rolled my eyes and walked away, shaking my head in disbelief. Karen was the epitome of entitlement, and I couldn't understand how someone could act that way in public. A few weeks later, I was out for a jog when I saw Karen again. This time, she was arguing with a man outside of a local coffee shop. As I got closer, I could hear her yelling about how she had been waiting for her coffee for too long and how the man should give her a discount. The man, who I learned was named Alex, was trying to calm Karen down, but she wasn't having any of it. I demand to speak to your manager. You're all incompetent and don't know how to do your jobs, she shouted. I decided to step in once again. Excuse me, ma'am, but maybe you should consider that everyone here is doing the best they can. It's not fair for you to treat them like this. Karen turned to me with a look of pure rage. You again? Don't you have anything better to do than harass me? I couldn't believe her audacity. I'm not harassing you. I'm just trying to help. But it's clear that you don't want any help. Maybe you should take a long look in the mirror and realize that your entitlement is causing problems for everyone else. Karen looked like she was about to explode, but before she could say anything else, Alex stepped in. Sir, thank you for trying to help, but I'll handle this from here, he said. I nodded and walked away, feeling frustrated and exhausted. Dealing with entitled people like Karen was always draining, but I couldn't just sit by and watch her treat others badly. Here we are. Let me tell you a story about my encounter with an entitled woman who tried to ruin my day. My name is Alex. Not my real name, but I have always liked it, and I'm a 25-year-old woman. I'm an artist who creates unique pieces of art that I sell at local markets and online. I'm also a full-time university student studying graphic design. I'm an introvert who usually keeps to myself, but when it comes to my art, I'm a different person. I'm proud of what I create, and I enjoy sharing it with others. I was setting up my booth at the local farmers market. I had a prime location near the entrance, and my display of paintings and prints was attracting a lot of attention. I was feeling pretty good about myself and my art when she showed up. Her name was Karen, and she was a middle-aged woman who seemed to think the world revolved around her. She was accompanied by her daughter, who was around 10 years old. Karen's daughter was admiring one of my paintings when Karen approached me. Excuse me, but I have a question for you. Sure, what can I help you with? Can you make me a custom painting? Of course, what were you thinking? I want a painting of my daughter and me, something that we can hang in our living room. Sure, I can do that. Do you have a specific size in mind? Karen thought for a moment before saying, I want it to be at least 3 feet by 4 feet. That's a pretty large size. It would take me a while to complete, and I would need a deposit before I started. Karen huffed and said, Well, I need it by next week for my daughter's birthday party. I'm sorry, but I can't complete a custom piece that quickly. It would take at least a month for me to finish it. What kind of artist are you? I need this painting, and I need it now. I tried to reason with her, but she wasn't having any of it. She accused me of being lazy and unprofessional, and she even threatened to leave a bad review of my business online. At this point, I was done with Karen and her entitled attitude. I calmly told her that I couldn't help her and went back to setting up my booth. But Karen wasn't finished with me yet. As she walked away, she deliberately knocked over one of my paintings, causing it to shatter on the ground. Oops, she said with a smug smile on her face. My mistake. I was furious. Not only had she insulted me and my art, but she had also deliberately destroyed one of my pieces. I wanted to confront her, but I knew that would only escalate the situation. Instead, I took a deep breath and began to clean up the mess. Later that day, I received a message from Karen's daughter. She apologized for her mother's behavior and explained that Karen had been going through a difficult time and had been taking her frustrations out on others. She also asked if she could purchase one of my paintings as a gift for her mother. I was touched by the daughter's kindness and decided to give her a discount on the painting she wanted. I packaged it up and sent it to her, hoping it would brighten her day.